Juho Romakkaniemi, you're the CEO of the Finnish Chamber of Commerce and one of the co-chairs of EUROCHAMBRES Single Market Committee. The COVID crisis is still here, but Europe is already thinking about how it emerges from the lockdown phase. And I just want to know from your perspective, from speaking to businesses and of course your wide network, what do businesses want to see?
Well, thank you, Catherine. First of all, I have to say that we need common approach in the EU to opening up the borders and the restrictions that we have had in different countries have been hampering the businesses and the trade across the single market. And now we need a coherent plan how to open up in the different countries.
We've seen these restrictions, like you say, restrictions on movement of goods, signs in a sense of a resurgence of economic nationalism. When you speak to your members, are they concerned that they will not be able to sell their goods across borders? And we see some measures like the Ministry of Agriculture in Poland saying you shouldn't buy goods that are imported from other EU countries, which is quite incredible for an EU member.
Yes, I definitely can see that kind of tendencies here and there, but in general I think that the governments can see the benefits of the single market as a whole, and I think that the European Commission has done quite decent job taking into account its competencies to guide the member states and the traffic in the borders during the crisis.
So, I mean, one measure that they took was the green lanes, and that's very much about the goods. But what about people? Is that an issue that's been brought up by your members?
Yes, that's been actually quite a big problem as well, because there are seasonal workers and expert teams which are required to maintenance, for example, the industrial facilities, and there has been very much difficulties in getting this kind of workers and teams across the borders during the past months. I hope that the situation is now easing up and the member state can take more rational approach to the restrictions that they have imposed.
One of the issues that has come up is that Europe has been dependent on buying protective equipment from outside the EU. Do you think there is a need for reshoring some manufacturing to Europe, especially things like protective equipment, or do you think that this is protectionism and it's always a bad thing?
Well, I think that partly, yes, we need some European manufacturing in the future, and I think that we need a very specific market for that. Actually, that could be one outcome of the crisis, that the European Union could be the one that is making sure of the security of supply of these medical equipments in the future. But I can see also some tendencies that the protectionism as a whole is raising its head across the Europe, and this crisis is also used as actually some sort of an excuse to repatriate the production of several goods and industrial products with some state subsidies as well. I would not want us to go there, because the Europe's competitiveness and the integrity of the single market is something that we need to protect in the future as well.
There's been a lot of concern from some countries that the massive amounts of state aid that are being doled out and how that's being sort of given rather disproportionate way, in the sense that 51% has already been granted to Germany through whatever schemes that are compliant with the state aid scheme, but also mean that those with the biggest pockets can give the greatest support to their business. Are you concerned about market distortion?
Well, as I said in the beginning, the EU hasn't had the competencies and hasn't had the resources to handle several things that have been cried out for EU to take care during the crisis. It has done its best to loosen up the rules and create the new instruments as we have seen the crisis unfold throughout Europe. I think that these concerns are something that we need to take into account and improve the systems and state aid rules and facilities as we go. I think that the one big conclusion after the crisis should be that the EU should have resources and competencies to address this kind of a crisis in the future as well. Then we can do it in the fair and unbiased manner.
It's very recent. The Franco-Allemande French Merkel-Macron announcement. I don't know whether you've had the chance to follow it yet, but a 500 billion fund supporting those member states most affected. What do you think the reaction of EuroChambre will be to that initiative?
Well, I think that we are always on the side of the EU action because it's usually the best way of safeguarding the level playing field and single market throughout Europe. We have to get into the details of this proposal before making up our final mind. But in general, I think that this kind of proposals might be good solution to come out of the crisis and help those member states that don't have the resources at the moment to do it themselves.
And you're the CEO of the Finnish Chamber of Commerce. When your members, I mean, are they feeling positive about the future? I mean, could we be looking at a V-shaped, pattern where we're going to have a deep dip in the economy, but a sharp exit from this crisis? Or do you think it might have a longer-term toll?
Well, we are doing a survey within our members every 2 weeks. Actually, we are launching it this Wednesday, and the preliminary data that we have tells us that the crisis is not over within the companies and the businesses throughout Finland. Uncertainty and expectations of that the worst is still coming can be seen in the data that we received. It requires from the governments also very decisive action to have timely stimulus packages to the economy, to ease up the infrastructure projects, the publicly funded projects, and also how to stimulate the consumer activity as well. And after that, there's a huge pay to bill for the European governments, and we need to pay that bill by structural reforms that increase the competitiveness of our countries, because there's no amount of tax hikes or cuttings to the budget that can fill the whole of the public finances that we can see forming at the moment throughout European budgets.
Finally, one of your co-chair of the Single Market Committee is the head of the Serbian Chamber of Commerce. And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about their perspective from the Western Balkans or outside the EU. How important is it to them that our single market, in a sense, is working to its optimal level?
Of course, the single market is one of the great European achievements that we have seen in the past. We everyday Europeans usually doesn't pay enough attention what kind of benefits and huge opportunities, growth and jobs it has brought to us Europeans. And sometimes it feels that the new member states and the countries outside of the single market can see the value of the single market better than we do ourselves.
Yes. Juho, thank you very, very much indeed.